Again, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alejandro Alvarez, and I want to welcome you to our Open Office Hours series on NetSuite expense reporting. We are going to get started. Please, if somebody could confirm via the Q&A window that you can see my PowerPoint slide that has the topic and the date, that'll be great. I'm going to take this as a yes, and I'm going to switch over to NetSuite. So can you all see, if you can all see NetSuite, I'm going to log into NetSuite here and show you the functionality that's our topic today. And today, like I said, we're going to concentrate on expense reporting. And in order to do that, I'm just going to log into my NetSuite account. And at first, I'm going to show you how you would submit, or how an employee would submit an expense report in NetSuite in the computer through this UI. And then I'll show you how you would do it. I'll make a switch, and I'll show you how you would do it on your mobile phone as well. So thank you, Aaron, for responding. You can see the application. So this is what's called the Employee Center. This is a limited user license for employees that only have to do certain tasks within NetSuite. One of them being able to create and approve expense reports. The other one being able to create and approve purchase orders or time entries. And finally, the option to be able to approve vendor bills via a vendor bill approval workflow. Today, we're going to concentrate on the expense reports. So when an employee comes into this Employee Center, what they'll be able to see is, the information about themselves, some home links, and then what purchases they have available to approve or create, and then expense reports. So in this case, I'm logged in as Ann Trainer, and I have several expense reports that I've created and are in the process of approval or have been approved. And I'm just going to create and enter a new expense report. Again, this can be done from any computer, anywhere around the world, as long as there's a internet connection. And in a minute, I'll show you how we do it through the phone. And it's a very simple user interface. Automatically, the employee will default to their own. They cannot submit, unless you give them permission, submit expenses for another employee. It will default to the currency of the subsidiary that they belong to, if you have multiple subsidiaries. And if you have multiple currencies, you can always also change that. The employee can enter a purpose for the expense. So in this case, I'm going to enter webinar, and they can then enter their expenses one at a time. In this case, I am going to multi-currency, and I'm going to enter expenses for this week. So I can start with, on Monday, maybe I had a business meal. You have categories. These categories are very simple business categories that you would code the account, the GL account behind the scenes. So the users don't have to worry about GL accounts. They just worry about the categories that they can enter. So in this case, a business meal, I'm going to enter that's $10, business meal with client. And they automatically be coded to their cost center and their line of business. You can give them the option to change that. You can give them the option to code it to a specific location if they're working for multiple locations. And if it's related to a customer, and it's a project expense, so this can be work for both project and non-project expenses, you can select a project here. So in this case, I'm just going to say that this is the sample TNM project, and automatically it defaults to billable. And you can find whether it's billable to the client or not. And that's another webinar that we'll talk about, billable expenses. But here, this is where you would define, and you can control here whether it's billable or not, so that the employee doesn't have to worry about that. Finally, you can select a file from your desktop to attach a receipt. So in this case, I'm just going to attach a receipt that I have from my desktop here. And you give it a name, business meal receipt. This is much on the phone app. And if the employee used the corporate, if you happen to have a corporate credit card, then you can set it by default that all their expenses are entered via the corporate credit card. You can see here that I have the option. So if I use the corporate credit card for everything, I can set it by default, and then I can then uncheck it on every line. So maybe this business meal was using the corporate credit card, but I created, $2 worth of copies, and I'm gonna say this is $100, not just a cheap business meal, $2, and I didn't use the corporate credit card, so I do want to be reimbursed for that. And this wasn't for the project, this was for something else. So I enter all my expenses. I can say that I want to do this later if I'm not done with it, so I can enter this every day. If I'm done with the report, I can just submit it here. So I'm gonna first click complete later, and how that would look on their dashboard, which they can come to, every day and update it if they have expenses every day. That would be the suggestion that they do it, daily if possible. You can see that this is in progress. If I log in again and I go to my dashboard, my expense reports, I can see here that this was in progress, and I can click on the reference number, and then it only shows $2 because that's the amount that I would be reimbursed, right? So here you can see there's $102, 100 were put on the corporate credit card, 2 are reimbursable. So I'm going to click edit here to finish it, and I'm just going to submit it. In this case, nothing's changed, so it warns me that nothing's changed, and it submits the report. Once it submits, when I submit the report, you'll see that it's pending supervisor approval. So now I'm going to, now that I've entered my report and all your employees have entered the report, I'm going to switch over to the supervisor of this person, and this is the controller. If I come in as a supervisor, I have my dashboard. This is a standard dashboard in NetSuite. Well, I see that I have 2 expense reports to approve. Once I refresh it, I can see that I have 2 expense reports to approve, and I can come and approve all expense reports, or I can come and review the expense reports one at a time. So here I'm gonna click on the expense report that I just submitted. You can see all the details that I entered, the webinar, the details here. I can see the receipt here if I want to enter and see that receipt and validate that that's really the right receipt. I can review that all in the same system. Everything here, you can see here that the expense report was marked as a corporate credit card, and all I have to do here is approve it. Once I approve it, it goes to accounting approval, and that's the next step of approval. And I just happen to be the controller, so I could be doing both steps. Typically, you would have a department manager maybe, and then the controller or somebody in accounting to do the accounting approval. But the accounting approval is mostly a secondary approval you select to have in order to have to validate that the expenses are coded correctly to the right category. And if I want to change them, I can edit this and change that. I could have also rejected the expense report. In this case, I didn't. And I can see in the meantime, I can see here from an accounting perspective what the GL impact is going to be. Right? In this case, before it gets approved, it's going to go to an unapproved expense reports account. It's $100 is going to go to a corporate credit card, a corporate Amex, and that corporate Amex was defined as the default account for this employee, and also the default account for the company. So you can define expense account or corporate credit card accounts for the company, and also at the employee level if you happen to have more than one corporate credit card. And then you can see the expenses where they're going to be coded. So now that I've reviewed this and I'm okay with this, I'm going to approve it, do the accounting approval. And once I do the accounting approval, now the expense report is going to be approved. So if I go and I look at these expense reports here, if I go back to the expense report and review it here, now I can see that the GL impact changed. Now it's not that non-posting expense report account is going to the expense reports payable account, which I also define in the system, right? So once I've been able to review and enter the expense report, it's approved and by accounting, and now I can make this payment to the employee. So you can define how to do the payment. Maybe you pay via payroll, so you create a report and send this to your payroll company, and then it would have to be updated when the payroll is paid. Or you can pay the employee by issuing a check, right, if you want to do that. Or you can pay the employee via ACH if you want to pay those separately from payroll. In this case, I'm going to pay the employee via a check. I can see here that I have 2 expense reports that I owe this employee, so I'm going to pay them both. I can select this. I can select the check to be printed later when I do my check run, so you can see that the check is not selected here. It's for $52. I'm paying it out of my checking account, and I click submit. I don't have to do this one at a time. I can do this as part of my weekly or bi-weekly bill payment run in order to pay the vendor, or in this case, the employee. Now that I've selected that, this is the expense report. If I go back to that expense report, you'll see that expense report is marked as paid in full. And all I have to do here is do my check run. And that will be this account. Then I would have to go in the AP role to be able to print the check, but that would be the next step in the process. So now that I've shown you the user interface, a couple of things that I want to show you. Let me switch over to my phone. I can come here and I can refresh my dashboard here. You see that I only have 1 expense report to submit. And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to switch over to my phone and show you that user interface. So you should be able to see my screen, and I'm going to open NetSuite here. And I'm going to log into NetSuite in my phone. So you can see here, this is I'm on an Android phone. I am going to enter my password, click login. It's going to take me automatically to here. I have fingerprint validation here as an additional security measure, and it brings me into my my dashboard. In this case, I'm logging directly into my expense report, or sorry, my employee center dashboard. You can see here, I can see here my time entries. I can hear the expenses. I have expenses that I have to report that I haven't submitted. And I'm just going to click on this new expense. And just like the UI, I can select my date. I can select the amount. So I'm going to say $75. I can select the category. So in this case, I'm selecting a category of training. And I can enter a memo. I can do it, and I can also take a picture of my receipt. So you can see here there's a take a photo icon and a pick a file item. I'm gonna take a picture, and I'm gonna take a picture of a receipt that I just have to have here for lunch, and I'm gonna click enter. And now that I've done that, I could add other pictures, and I can now save this expense. So now I have this expense log. I have 2 expenses here. And you can see here, I don't know why it's showing that black box, but here at the bottom, there's a create expense report button. I can select the expense reports, the expenses that I want to select for that expense report, click OK, or that checkbox, and it's going to take me to the header of that expense report. Takes a little bit to load. And so I can see here my header, my categories. If any field is mandatory, it will be marked by a star. So in this form, I have a, oh, sorry, I think I'm logged into the wrong account. So yes, I'm logged into the wrong account. Let me try that again in my, in the right role. Sorry, I have multiple roles here. So I want to use the right account so we can see it back in the UI. So this is the one. So I'm gonna do that again. New expense. Yesterday, $75. Oh, I think I stopped sharing. So here we go again. $75. The category was, I'm gonna say here, business meal again, and I'm gonna take a picture of that receipt. Save that. Create expense report. I'm gonna submit all the expenses that I have here. So I'll just submit that one expense report, these two expenses that I have, create that expense report. You can see I'm trainer, and I can check if there's any mandatory fields. There's no mandatory fields, and I can check my expenses. Both expenses are okay, and I can submit. You can see the options that I have is to submit them to complete later. So in this case, I'm going to submit it. It is asking me for an expense category, so I'll check on that again. So the corporate card category, and then let me just do this so I don't get any more notifications here. And let me enter the second expense here. I don't have a category here. I need to select the business meal again. And submit now. So I'm submitting that expense. I took a picture of both those receipts. As long as once it completes the submission, I'm going to stop sharing on my phone, and I'm going to switch over to my computer again. I apologize for all these technical issues. I can't seem to use Zoom. Stop sharing, and I'm going to share again my desktop. Now, if I'm back again as Carol Morgan here, and if I refresh, you'll see that now again I have two expense reports to approve. And if I click now into expense report 7, this is an expense report I just created on my phone, and it'll have both expenses that I created, $75 each. And if I open the image, you'll see the report that I took, the receipt that I took a picture of, and now I can go through the process of approving it, and then I have the accounting approval again, and I can approve it again this way. So for expense reports, that's the main functionality. I do want to show you a couple of new features that are coming up in the new release. I don't have them available here to show you a demonstration of them, but I'd like to talk about them. And I will also open it up for Q&A. This is a shortened session because of the functionality, but hopefully it's useful. And again, if there's any questions, please let me know. I'm going to switch over to a release preview account, which is release preview account is an account that NetSuite gives you access to before you get upgraded to the new release. And the one thing I want to show here in this release preview account is going to be this is a release preview. Yes, this is a release preview account, and I want to show you the expense report policies here, and the ability that NetSuite is adding in the new release to create policies. And the idea for this is to facilitate or limit, obviously, your employees from entering reports and expense reports that don't match the policy, and then you're going to have to reject anyway. And the way that you can report enter a policy is going to be, you can define the policy. You can define a start and end date of the policy. So if you don't enter an end date, it's going to be good until you actually close the policy. You can define what company the policy it's applicable to. So this may be something that is applicable to the U.S. subsidiaries in your account, but not the Australia and overseas subsidiaries. You can define as, again, if it's applicable to a specific department or a specific location. Also, if it's applicable to a specific company. So if you have a project where they can only, they only accept, you know, $10 for meals, for example, you can enter here. You can select the category that is going to be applicable to. So let me select a category here. And I'm gonna, again, select the project here. And then you can define, is this per individual expense report or per day? So I'm going to say that your maximum expense category is $25. The action is gonna be, do not allow outside the limit, so I don't want to let you enter it. And you know, if it's a warning, maybe you say, well, it requires a memo or requires a receipt, right? So in this case, I'm gonna say to not allow me to enter it. This is for the US West. And you can define, you know, specific notifications to an email to specific recipients. So once you define the policy, then you can obviously that policy goes into effect. It went into effect today. So if I were to come here and enter an expense report for an employee that is for this project, then I would not be able to. So let's give that a try. So I selected that project, I put $50, my policy is $25. I didn't select the class of department. All that matters is this is for the US subsidiary, which is here, the US subsidiary. I'm not going to select the department here, or it automatically defaults to my department. And see if, let me save it. So now when I try to save it, says your expense report policy violates the following expense report policy, sample policy. For more details, please click on the Show Policies button. And I can see the Show Policies. Click on the Show Policies button and it tells me that there's a policy that doesn't allow me to enter that. $25, and this is my expense report. It's 50, so I won't be able to enter it. So I can change this to $25 and then, you know, take it out with my manager. So in that, oh, $25. Now that I saved it, because I'm within the policy limits, it will let me save the report and eventually it is submitted for approval. The other functionality that's coming in release 20.2 is the ability to integrate your Amex corporate credit card. Right now it's limited to Amex, but NetSuite is adding functionality every 6 months, and the current functionality would be if you do have an American Express corporate credit card for you or your employees, then the employees will be able to configure NetSuite to be able to pull those expenses that they charge to that credit card into the expense report and just have to classify them. This is something that some of the other applications out there in the market like Expensify and Concur can do already. And those are third-party apps that obviously have an additional cost to you, but NetSuite is bringing that functionality into its core application. Like I said, right now limited to American Express, but no doubt, even though they haven't said it, no doubt in the next few releases at some point, they might add additional credit cards to that list as well. So with that, that is the end of our prepared remarks for today. I want to thank you for your attention. See if there are any open questions that we need to answer right now. There's no open questions. See if there are any questions that you may have. If not, we appreciate your attention today and look forward to talking to you in the next webinars. And if you have any questions that you want to ask privately, please shoot me an email and we'll be glad to jump on a call to help you out.